Little after 9 o'clock here in North Texas, 11 p.m. in Venezuela, where a historic U.S. military operation was carried out. Here's what we know at this hour. Early Saturday, a flurry of U.S. military strikes pounded the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. U.S. forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. They arrived by plane in New York, where they will face several charges, including narco-terrorism. The pair has been taken to a detention center in Brooklyn, where they will be held. At a news conference earlier today, President Trump said the United States will run Venezuela until there can be a safe transition. But right now, there is no indication of how the U.S. is running that country. New tonight, Nicolas Maduro being perp-walked at the DEA office in New York City following a long-day affair that started early this morning. Maduro and his wife were led off of an airplane at Stewart Airport in New York, surrounded by law enforcement late this afternoon. They will be held at a detention facility in Brooklyn. Maduro arrived at the facility around 7:30 this evening. This morning, President Trump posted a photo of Maduro wearing a blindfold and sweatsuit on board the USS Iwo Jima. Maduro and his wife now face a slew of charges in the Southern District of New York, including narco-terrorism conspiracy. The new indictment describes Maduro's regime as a corrupt, illegitimate government, claiming the president is responsible for flooding the United States with illicit drugs.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil.
So the new indictment includes Maduro, his wife, and also his son. Maduro and other Venezuelan officials were indicted on similar charges in 2020. In recent months, the Trump administration carried out strikes on several boats off the coast of that country, claiming they were involved in drug smuggling. Maduro is expected to face a U.S. judge sometime next week. U.S. military leaders say this morning's strikes were months in the making, with intelligence leaders working to track Maduro. In fact, 150 aircraft were launched from across the world to converge on that South American nation. Several blasts were seen in the capital city of Caracas. A team eventually captured the country's president and his wife, Celia Flores, from their home on a military base. Officials say no U.S. military members were killed in the operation, and despite one helicopter being hit, all aircraft were able to complete the mission and return safely.
Our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out.
The White House releasing photos of leaders watching as the attack happened. Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez said some civilians and members of the Venezuelan military were killed in the operation. At this hour, we do not have an idea of just how many are dead. Some took to the streets of Venezuela following that attack. By law, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who was picked by Maduro, should take power. Rodriguez held an address on Saturday calling Maduro the rightful leader and demanded the U.S. free him. President Trump says American officials have been in contact with Rodriguez, but the United States will run the country until there can be a transfer of power. The United States plan also involves taking over the country's vast oil supply. Reactions have been coming in from around the world, and here in the U.S., much of the response has been along party lines. Congress was not notified ahead of Saturday's attack. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer says the plan for the U.S. to run Venezuela should, quote, strike fear in the hearts of all Americans.
Hear President Trump say that he intends for the United States to run Venezuela. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And looking at the president's demeanor, he didn't even seem to be aware of how dangerous and reckless it is. Let me be clear. Maduro is an illegitimate dictator, but launching military action without congressional authorization, without a credible plan for what comes next, is reckless.
It's very clear what the president is saying, and he's been very clear about it. Not only today, by the way, but he's been very clear since the beginning of this administration, which is that regime, that cartel, can no longer be part of Venezuela. They cannot be controlling Venezuela. He's declared war on these narco cartels, including by name El Cartel de los Soles, headed by Maduro. But logic will tell you, because this is real, this is not a TV episode, that there's going to have to be a transition period. And the United States, as the president has been very clear, does not want to allow for the head to be taken out and all of a sudden the same regime to stay there, the same cartel. So the U.S. is going to be involved in that process.
Today's news drew crowds across the U.S. In Florida, some Venezuelans living in the U.S. celebrated the removal of Maduro. Since 2017, around 8 million people have fled that country. Protesters opposing the attack gathered outside of the White House, many carrying signs which read, "Stop bombing Venezuela now." Similar protests were held in other parts of the country as well. Those protests, in fact, carried over here into North Texas. We want to show you the scene this evening in downtown Dallas. Sky 4 over a crowd of about 100 people who were speaking out against President Trump's actions, others praising him. And while Venezuela may feel like worlds away, according to the latest census data, more than 190,000 Venezuelans call Texas home, and about 30% of them reside right here in the Metroplex. Fox 4's Vanya Castillo was in the middle of all of the action and continues our coverage tonight live. Hi, Vanya.
Hi, Casey. Yeah, from protest to celebration, people here in North Texas are divided over everything that happened in Venezuela today.
Venezuela is free, is no dictadura.
As news of the U.S. capturing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro reached the United States, Cinia Gonzalez and a group of Venezuelans huddled in her restaurant around the TV.
No hemos dormido, no hemos dormido. Aquí estuvimos hasta las 2 de la mañana.
She says she cried and hasn't slept, saying she's been at the restaurant since 2 a.m.
Pronto vamos, mi amor, pronto.
For Deserini Nacherino, her reason to celebrate is different. She left Venezuela with her daughter when she was just a baby and hasn't been back.
Ella no conoce Venezuela, sus tradiciones, sus comidas, lo poco que conoce porque yo se lo he inculcado y quiero que conozca Venezuela, su tierra, porque ella es de allá y yo quiero que ella sepa todo de Venezuela.
Saying her daughter doesn't know Venezuela, its traditions, its foods, and that the little she does know, she knows because she taught her, saying she wants her daughter to know her land. But not everyone is in agreement about the strike. At least 100 protesters gathered in downtown Dallas in disapproval of the Trump administration's involvement in Venezuela.
And we're also here to protest the abduction of President Maduro and his wife. That's an act of war. It's an act of U.S. aggression, and we don't support it. Our message is no more war for oil, no more intervention, and we want President Maduro free.
Protesters saying they fear the U.S. has ulterior motives for Venezuela.
An escalation of the war and the usurpation of oil. Venezuela has more oil than anywhere in the world, and this is clearly a war for oil.
President Trump said that the U.S. would take control of Venezuela's massive oil reserves and, quote, get the oil flowing.
UMDAR.
This man, a Venezuelan American, interrupting our interview, saying that the people protesting are not from Venezuela and don't know the struggles people living there face under Maduro.
but I would like to invite them to go there and see how people is living there, how people is starving, how people is without medicine in the hospitals, and how people is being tortured, you know?
He says he prays for New Venezuela.
They are in a free country. That's the difference. They can express themselves. So they have the right. I have the right here to be here. But we couldn't do this over there.
Well, overall, it was a peaceful protest. There were a few hecklers who did try to rile up the crowd, and Dallas police did have to get involved, asking people to step away from each other. Back to you, Casey.
An impromptu rally there in the streets of downtown Dallas. Thankfully, nobody hurt. Thanks, Fox 4's Vanya Castillo reporting live for us tonight. Thanks, Vanya. Major airlines have canceled flights to and from the Caribbean due to FAA restrictions. Texas Representative Venton Jones, who represents parts of Dallas in the Texas House, says he is stuck in St. Martin. Jones posted on social media that he is okay. This evening, we also spoke with a North Texas man who is visiting St. Croix and cannot get back home to Dallas to visit his grandmother, who was just put in hospice care.
I've, had to deal with that on top of all of this, airspace cancellations. And it's hard, but I've been able to FaceTime my grandmother with my cousin and see her and talk to her, even though she's not responsive.
For further context, check this out. A flight radar animation shows planes avoiding airspace over Venezuela and the region earlier today. Between 10 p.m. to midnight Central Time, flights were in parts of Latin America, with the Venezuelan airspace practically empty. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says the FAA will lift those airspace restrictions when it's appropriate. We will continue to bring you the very latest details as they come into Fox 4. You can watch the latest developments live from anywhere on Fox Local. The Fox Local app is free, no subscription required. Also, make sure you're following our socials for up-to-the-second headlines.